Good afternoon and good morning to anyone that's joining on the earlier side. My name is Brandon Roberts from the support team, and welcome to our daily lunch and learn. We'll wait for some few people to get in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, it looks like we have one attendee, 1344 or I3440. One, did you have any questions or need any assistance with decisions today? Okay, then I will go into some repository stuff. I'm the repository subject matter expert for the support team. So I'll just go give a brief demo of the repository if you've never seen it before. So let me share my screen here. And now, hopefully, if I did it right, you should be looking at my decision screen with the lunch and learn. If you don't, just message me in the Zoom chat and I can make that happen. But starting off with the repository, it's a server that we use, and it's like a GitHub repository, or it's just a server that we use to sort of manage and migrate projects across your higher level environments. So start off configuring it. We'll need to go to the systems area and look for settings. And there will be our designer repository settings here. Right now on default, it's always going to be set to localhost 8081, but you'll need to configure that for the correct repository. I'll go ahead and just do this configuration real quick. The IP of ours, so 10.10.11.136. You go to show repository actions here and say the settings. So there are a couple options here. If you're using single sign-on for your environment and you want to set that up for your repository setting, you'll need to enable this here and we'll get an authentication key. That'll be used on the repository server, which I'll show in a bit. We also have the option to exclude unit tests. So in case you don't want to bring your unit tests across, your other environments, you will enable that. And there's also exclude generated data structures. This is more for like JSON and XML structure types. What you want to do when like importing and moving those environments around, or just bring the JSON and the XML type. But you'll notice if you ever create a JSON type, you'll create simple data structures from that. This is just to exclude those simple data structures. The best way is just to move the JSON structure, XML structure around, allow that to just generate the new simple data structures. And the allow checkout to delete dependencies checkbox is also a very handy tool. So lots of times when we do a deletion or we try to delete a project or something, you'll get plagued with a bunch of dependency error messages, especially in checkouts. If you're already expecting just to delete these and need these deleted, those deletions could prevent that, or these warnings could prevent those from actually getting deleted. This will allow you to delete dependencies. It is a little dangerous though, because if you delete dependencies wrongly or delete a dependency that you actually need for something, that can cause you to break a flow object. There's a pop-up that allows you to give a more detailed list or a less detailed list based on how many objects are in your check-in or checkout, and a repository API timeout. That just basically is how long before the API that calls the repository times out. So we can save these settings. And now if you go to any designer folder now, you will have actually, let me refresh real quick. And then you'll be able to go to, and you'll see a designer repository category. What I'll do first here is to do add to project. And I will create a new one called just lunch and learns. Continue, and you get the option to add a single folder or add a folder and content. So I'll select folder and content, which will give me my test flow and this folder, and you'll have these options here. So include subfolders or any folders that live within it. Exclude history folders is something you normally want to check. You only want to include history folders if you have like backups of the flow that you want to bring over as well. You want to add dependencies normally, unless this is for if you have a dependency in a separate folder, right? So if you want to just send everything without the dependencies, you'd uncheck that, but normally you'll keep this check marked. And exclude hidden items. So this is for hidden items, more like preview images or unit test rules or unit test flows or rule flows. Normally you want to like exclude these sorts of things and allow that to be checked in, or allow it to be checked in for especially rule flows. So once you have what you need here, you can hit select or next, and then this will have dependencies. If there are any dependencies that aren't a part of the project or aren't part of any project and the repository or the system detects that, you can use this add option. They'll show up here if there are, and then you can choose which ones you want to do. For now, just select add here, and we have test flow and lunch and learns here. So I'll commit now, and you'll get the actual commit to the repository. Here, you have a couple options to include only my changes, which will go by the modified date. So if you're the last modified by user, this will only choose those. You'll then get the force check-in option as well. This is for a scenario if you do a check-in from another environment and then you want to check in changes from this environment, the repository doesn't know what to do with it. So this one just tells it to override whatever version it has and use this version. We'll just check that. We'll put in some comments. test check-in for lunch and learns and commit. Okay, it is committed. And what I'll go ahead and do is open up our repository server. If you go to designer repository, you'll see now we have a bunch of more options, but we also have the open repository server option. I'm gonna select that here. Right now I haven't logged in, so I'll just do a quick login. And here we are, we're on the repository server, and you can see the lunch and learns. So that's how you'll check in a project into your repository. Now, when you want to check out a project, you'll just come back to your server. You can right click and go to check out project here. But now I'll just grab my test here. You'll have your branches that you can select. I have test branch 1 in trunk, and you can also specify the date and revision of the objects that you're pulling. For now, we'll just get trunk and then do checkout. And then we'll continue and continue. And you'll see I have a previewed image, and there's a folder that isn't on this. Right now, I don't need the history folder of this, or I don't need this preview image. So I'll just exclude from import and continue the import, do the continue. And some people that may be who are used to the repository, we have a new sort of UI. We're improving this with every release, so it's kind of a bit smoother. Here, we'll go ahead and click done. And so now you'll see I have my sandbox, my war zone, and I have my test folders here. So those are the main actions you'll be using from a client side of the repository, check in and check out. Now, if you go to the repository itself, there are a couple options here that you can to sort of make your project, usable for your other environments, or you have separate options. For now, just go into the lunch and learns folder, and you'll see I have that with my resources. So notice you'll see there's 3 resources. This includes a source folder. That's why the resource count's a bit different here, but that's expected right now. We've already have some tickets in to modify this to be a bit more accurate, but right now that's just how this works. So we have lunch and learns, and we have our trunk branch. One of the options, or one of the actions that gets used a lot, and I encourage you to use when you use a repository, is the create branch action. This will then allow you to create a branch and be an exact copy of the branch you want to do. Customers can handle this certain ways. Oh, this question. Anonymous attendee. Okay. Now, what are the best practices to deploy post to flow, run as settings, and system constants through the repo? So system constants, specifically, I would have those as like a separate project. I would have my system constants as a separate project away from, all my other higher level projects. And then I would use the merge branch action to sort of separate them. So I was getting into, a lot of customers, I suggest this to, they'll have, like, you have different system constants for like your QA and your dev and your production. I would create a separate branch from each. So I would just say a QA branch. And then I would check that out to your QA environment, and then set those environments for, set those values for that environment and check that into the repository. So then you have your QA set of system constants, your production system constants, and then you can make your trunk, your dev, or however you want to do it. Then when you make changes, you can go into your repository. Let me refresh this real quick. Let's go back here. And you can then actually go and update the resource here. You can use a file and then choose to update it there. Now, post to flow run settings, I don't believe you can change, or I'm not sure if you can actually import and export your settings from the repository. I've never tried that, but I don't think that is an option currently. I just do this and done. Back to this. Once you have your QA branch, or whatever branch you have here, you'll then want to check that out to your environment. So if you go back to your environment, go to designer repository and go to checkout project, you can then select your project. I'll do lunch and learns, and then you'll see my branch here, and I'll do QA and then do checkout. This will then check out the branch here and then do this. There's also a second area where we can do this. You can go to the system folder, you'll go to designers, and then you'll go to repository. And here you'll see your projects also, as well as the branch name. So you can do checkouts from here, but you can also do the change branch action, which will allow you to just choose the branch and do the import that way. You also have options to remove the project and remove the project locally. So remove project will remove the project association on your client environment. I'll just go ahead and do this. So Brandon test is gone, but it'll also, well, it should also, I'll hop back here. It'll also remove the project from the repository. So that's the remove project option. We then have the remove project locally option, which will then only remove it from the client. So if I select it here, you'll see Lunch and Learn is gone. But if I come back to the repository, Lunch and Learns is still here. So those options are available for you. Normally, I'd recommend just using the remove from project locally, unless you actually have to remove the project entirely, but the locally will just remove the associations with those objects. It will not delete those. So keep that in mind. So if you use that option, you won't have to worry about losing the project, but you will, if you use those options, you'll never have to worry about losing those items on the client server. You'll just either remove the associations on the repository or on the client server, or remove the project from the repository and remove the associations from that. Last two things I want to sort of cover for this on the repository are our rollback to revision and actually get sources, get project of a revision as well. So get project of this revision is what it is. You'll just right click it, you'll select this, and it will download a version of that project with that revision that you can then import and export. There's also the revert revision that will revert resources back to a prior revision. So that won't affect newer revision. That won't affect newer resources, as those aren't affected by those revisions. But resources that were checked in, say 3.6, will get reverted back to 3.6. The last is rollback to this revision. So this will roll back resources back to this revision, but it will also delete the resources that are post this revision, or will mark them as deleted. So this is if you want to roll your project back, remove those resources and get rid of them out of the project. Revert is if you just want to take some resources, keep your resources that you currently have, and revert those back to the selector revision. The last action I want to discuss is the merge to branch. And this is essentially just a copy. We'll just, you'll select your branch that you want to merge your changes from to, and you'll select your destination branch, just QA, get select, and you'll get this little selective, like the selective data grid. Here you can choose which items you want to merge, if you want to do everything at once, or you just want to do one, and you'll do a merge. From here, you will also get a revision for that merge. So this covers pretty much what you need to know about the repository as far as getting it up and running, checking it in, checking it out, merge, and bringing those over. We do have a lot of documentation on it, so I encourage you to read through that. And if you have questions or need some clarification on some of the actions I just showed, if you do have problems with the repository, you're always welcome to submit a support ticket, and you'll probably just talk with me or one of the other repository SMEs, and we'll get you all right. Now that I've covered that, does anyone else have any questions? I see Morel's here as well. Hey, Morel, how you doing? Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions about the repository. We don't use that. I'd like to, but we don't.
Okay. So you guys just use like just normal import export, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Mhm.
Okay. And that is essentially a lot of what the import, or at least currently the repository uses a lot of the import export wizard like functionality. Like they use a lot of the flows. So the only thing that you're probably not making use of is just like versioning, which is fine. You know, as long as you need to, and like, you know, checking in changes and whatnot.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of that. And we're pretty good at making checkpoints, so we can always get back to something if we
Right.
need to do that. Yeah. So it's just a lot more manual, but we've got a lot
Yeah,
of the same functionality.
yeah, it serves the same purpose for the most part. That's all. You just don't have the some of the UI stuff. That's it though. Alrighty. If no one else had any questions, that's all I had today. I want to thank you for joining us. I think I don't remember who's on the docket for tomorrow. I don't actually. Let me double check the schedule real quick.
That's gonna be Josh Lax.
Okay, yep. We have Josh Lax, one of our professional services who, unlike me, he has a lot more experience building flows and doing the cool, crafty, tricky stuff that you guys really want to see. So stop by again tomorrow, same time, same place, and you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.